Greetings. Welcome to the American Psychological Association celebration of Women's History Month. I'm Tama Bryant, your 2023 president, and I am so excited to be joined by our special guests on today, Dr. Catherine Anderson and Dr. Carrie Castaneda Sound. I will ask each of them to introduce themselves. Let's start with Dr. Catherine.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be here today. I'm Catherine Anderson. I'm a social psychologist here in San Antonio, Texas at Our-Lady-de-Leaf University, and I'm currently the president of the Society of the Psychology of Women, Division 35 of APA.
Thank you. Welcome.
And I'm Carrie Castaneda Sound. I'm a faculty member at Pepperdine University, trained as a counseling psychologist, and I'm currently a licensed psychologist as well in California.
Great. Well, I am so glad to have you both here, that I count you not only as colleagues, but as sister friends. And I appreciate the ways in which we have been able to support each other and also really promoting the experience of the psychology of women across the association. And as we think about Women's History Month, often what comes to mind are the challenges that we face as we think about sexism nationally and globally. But we also recognize the importance of taking a strengths-based approach. And so I would like for each of you to share, as you look back on your life journey, what helped you to have an empowered sense of yourself as a woman. And I'll start with Dr. Catherine.
Well, like for many of us, I'm sure, it starts with my mom. I was very privileged to have a feminist historian mother who empowered me to, as did my father, to believe in myself and to believe that I can do anything that I set my mind to. And as a cis white girl being raised in New Orleans, I had exposure to a lot, certainly, of role models during the women's movement, but I also saw around me the inequities and lots of racial terror that really helped me to realize that it's my responsibility to utilize this empowerment to try to address these inequities. And so that's why I'm very pleased to be in this position now, to work on addressing our inequities that we face within our culture, within our society, within our field. And I feel less afraid now. In fact, I would say that I'm no longer afraid, even though I'm in Texas, to really try to face those inequities and speak my mind. So thank you for asking.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for sharing. And I love hearing about your mom and thinking about how that then translates to the work that you do and how you think about yourself. And Dr. Carrie.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of overlap with what Dr. Catherine said. I was fortunate to have parents that exposed me to experiences that tested my body physically, emotionally, spiritually through sports, through hiking, through camping. It could really test the limits of what I could do. And that was one piece in a much bigger puzzle. They also were not afraid to speak their mind. And my dad was a union steward at his work. And even now to this day, you can still see my 82-year-old mother speaking at school board meetings, at city council meetings about issues that are really important to her and her family and grandkids. So I think I was, it's just this perfect combination of activism, just empowerment that I could do what I set my mind to, but also an awareness that there were injustices in the world and that I had a responsibility as well to make the world better in small ways and hopefully in bigger ways.
Thank you so much. It's so great to hear not only about your mother, but also your grandmother. So this intergenerational rich history of using voice and agency. I know many people would easily understand the importance of us looking at the psychology of women, but when we think about feminist psychology, people have all kinds of responses to that word. And so can you define for us what is feminist psychology and what draws you to it? Dr. Catherine?
Hmm. To me, feminist psychology is a process of moving toward psychological, spiritual, sexual, physical liberation from oppression and focusing, centering the wellness of the liberation of people with identities that have been oppressed and that are under attack, particularly people with multiple marginalized identities, including non-binary and transgender folks. Because to quote Fannie Lou Hamer, nobody's free until everybody's free. Right? So engaging in this work together, this liberatory work together, we learn to care about and develop strong bonds of solidarity. And so to me, feminism is the process of actively, consistently engaging in our liberation and in solidarity together.
Beautiful. I love that. Liberation and solidarity. And Dr. Carey, how would you define it and what drew you to it?
I could talk about this all day, but I think what I'm most drawn to is I see feminist psychology as addressing and oppression in all forms in society. It is that part of collaboration that Catherine mentions, and I think that we often talk about the feminist process, which I'll talk about later a little bit. But right now, I see it as, well, for instance, the saying "the personal is political." That makes so much sense to me because when I see clients, we can name and diagnose, whatever's coming into the room, but when you do look in society about what sustains, what creates issues in people's lives. It could be depression, or it could be the fact that they live in community violence. There's so many factors that contribute to mental health and sustains mental illness. And so I think feminist psychology has given me a place to question the status quo. I've taken it also to specifically the part of mujerista psychology, which explores the lives of Latinas. And this is an approach that integrates feminist psychology with mujerista theology and liberation frameworks. And this just resonates with me because it also takes into account psychospirituality. So using this framework of mujerista approaches, I don't see it as an offshoot of feminist psychology in any way, but just situated simultaneously in different communities. So I just find that feminist psychology is broad enough that it gives me a space to explore what the work I do looks like in different communities.
Thank you so much for naming that. And it really inspires me to, in this moment, also name womanist psychology, the psychologies emerging out of Black women's experience. And Dr. Carey and I co-teach a course together where we both cover those areas. And it's so important for us to be aware of the wisdom that emerges from the life experiences of diverse women. And I know some also refer to multicultural feminists or intersectional feminist psychology. So for us to have the spaciousness to name the fullness of who we are. So in Women's History Month, we often think of these major figures in women's history. Often those that are named are US based. But I want us to think specifically about within the field of psychology. So I would love if each of you can share one psychologist who really their work you admire, that it has enriched you, and that you think more people should know about. And this time I'll start with Dr. Carey.
And you had to ask for just one. I mean, I could name a couple. I'm not going to stick with one, you know that. But someone who's really inspired me in my work is Dr. Lillian Comas Diaz, of course. I think more recently, two people share a lab. The IC Race Lab is led by Hector Adames and Nayeli Chavez Duenas. They're both part of the Radical Healing Collective, but their work is really moving the field in ways that is so needed. Intersectionality is the heart of their work. And they're moving conceptualizations from identities to really understanding the interlocking systems of oppression. So right now they're my favorites to read.
Yes, I love their work. Thank you so much. And Dr. Catherine, who would you like to name?
So it's so hard to choose because we've had the privilege of working with so many women personally and then have read so many amazing women that we would like to lift up from the psychologists. But I would like to lift up today Dr. Gerda Nicolas, who is a Haitian American community clinical psychologist at the University of Miami, who has developed culturally relevant methods to meet the needs of Haitians and Haitian Americans before and after the devastating earthquake in 2010. And what I think is one of the many things I think is so amazing about the work that she's done is that she described when she was awarded by Jessica Nelson Daniel the APA International Humanitarian Award in 2018, there to describe that she does this work because it is who she is. Because when she was raised in Haiti, she heard stories about how Haitians led, revolutions that freed themselves from enslavement, freed themselves from colonization, and how they not only um, utilize those strategies to maintain their own freedom, but also then worked with folks in Venezuela and Greece, in the United States, right, to promote liberation from colonization. And so she sees it as her imperative to her responsibility to engage in liberatory work wherever she goes. And so I think that's true feminist psychology.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for naming her and honoring her work. And I think just earlier this year in January, she co hosted a summit in Haiti looking at violence and trauma, and so continues to do such beautiful work. Well, I am excited that each of us have been either past or present presidents for the Society for the Psychology of Women. And one of the things that we talk about within the society is feminist leadership. So I would love if you would both share some ideas you have about feminist leadership, and we can start with Dr. Carey and then Dr. Catherine.
Sure. Well, I see feminist leadership as unapologetically relational, as transparent and inclusive. And I think that the goal is to see people as holistic human beings and to include them in all ways. We all are aware of misuses of power, so I think the added goal is to not perpetuate that in our leadership and to have spaces for people to be heard. Transparency, there's power in that. There's power in gaining the trust of others through sharing with them the process that we're going through. It can help repair ruptures, and it can help create a vision for growing and building on new ideas that come up. So for me, that unapologetically relational really stands out for me in terms of the work we do as feminist leaders.
Thank you so much. So important. And Dr. Catherine.
Well, what Carrie just said about relational leadership really does capture it. My friend Juliana once told me that that I'm a hub, that some people are spokes, some people are hubs, and kind of bring together the spokes and integrate. And I see that in Carrie, I see that in you, Dr. Brian, I see that in so many feminist leaders who are all about connecting people and my theme this year is coalition building, and the more that we can draw on each other's strengths and our access to resources and our networks, the stronger we can be. One thing I feel passionate about is that, as I think Carrie mentioned, that everyone needs to have the opportunity to share their input, their views. Everyone equally should have an opportunity to speak. We don't always have time for everyone to speak, but being conscious of how certain people who look like me, frankly, often can dominate a space or have historically dominated spaces. And also multi-directional mentorship. I think that's really key in terms of feminist leadership. That early career folks, that students can teach a lot to folks who are more advanced in their careers, and we all have a responsibility to mentor each other.
Thank you so much for naming that. And that mentorship piece is so important, which I think why it was hard for us to name one person, because so many people pour into us. And I just want to name that what you described seeing in Carrie and I, that we and others definitely see in you. And it's a gift to be able to hold that space for people of diverse identities so that we really can work in coalition building. So, yeah, thank you both so much for that. And important pieces for people, important issues for people who are listening to consider, for those who are interested in leadership, to consider the ways in which you will lead and to lead like women and to lead like feminists lead. It can be such an enriching part of organization and institution and community building. So we want to always be mindful not only of our history, but of our present. And so I want to ask you, Catherine, if you could talk about what are some of the issues that you currently see facing women? What are some of the challenges?
Well, I'm just going to focus on the elephant in the room and the lack of body autonomy. The legal removal of our human right to manage our own body, and the point that that is a human right, right, is it's rooted in the practice of treating enslaved women's bodies as property. The 1619 Project is on right now, right, and as it provides so much information, if you haven't already engaged with that work, about that history, and so all women know what it likes to feel sexually harassed. Perhaps all people do, but and feel like our bodies are not our own. It's extremely important that we recognize how that that directly impacts in a compounded manner Black, Asian, Indigenous, Latinx, Middle Eastern folks, trans women who have been exoticized for others' pleasure. And continue to be. Women with disabilities who are significantly harmed by the state control over our bodies, of lack of body autonomy. So I see objectification through sexual harassment that has historically been the case in its patriarchal cultures, and particularly in the zeitgeist of and legal removal of our ability to manage our own bodies and whether or not give birth.
Thank you so much for naming that. And it's one of the things I'm appreciative of within the American Psychological Association is that consistent stance in support of reproductive rights and also dealing with health equity when we consider our intersectionality and our various identities. And so being able to make decisions about our bodies is so important psychologically and holistically. And so thank you for that. And Carrie, can you share what's an issue or two that you see girls facing?
Yeah, I think we are forgetting the collective impact of COVID and the pandemic on people's lives. Girls were affected by it too. When their families didn't have access to healthcare or continue to not have access, they've experienced loss, just like all of us. And I think being able to access the spaces to get help isn't always available for them. And so I see many young girls still struggling and feeling like, what's the next step? Where's the next direction? And almost like an existential experience. So I'm speaking mainly about teen girls right now who experienced this and lost a lot of connection. The other issue I see, social media can do amazing things like you have done, Dr. Bryant, with your work. as I look at what social media is doing for some of our kids, I get concerned. It seems to be a vehicle for some ideas that reinforce problematic ideas around body, about shape, about ability and production of what our worth is as a person. And so I see a lot of young girls worried about that. Of, am I good enough? Do I look pretty enough? Am I typical? Or do I look different? Or and I think there's certain feeds in social media that can be very empowering, and I think it's our job in this field to really highlight those for not just young girls, but for their parents and caregivers as well.
Thank you so much for naming that. And people will think that was a planted question because while I have these 5 presidential initiatives, we're actually forming a 6th one, which is on the influence of social media on youth. And I think it's so important, as you name, for the young people, for their parents, for people who care for them, because while it can be a resource depending on what you're following and can be a great place for information, there's also a lot of misinformation, a lot of body shaming. And so there is much for us to do in that area. So while there are many challenges that we may be facing, something gives us hope that allows us to keep doing this work. And so I will start with Dr. Carey. What is something that's giving you hope these days or in general?
Well, personally, my spirituality is a big part of my life. And with that keeps me connected to people that inspire me, that keep me accountable to continue to do good work. I think the youth nowadays give me hope. Their bravery in speaking out. I just am in awe of what they're contending with and in very passionate ways. And so I think right now it's the youth more than anything.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And Dr. Catherine, what's giving you hope?
Well, what's giving me hope is really consistent with what Carrie was saying around youth. So the youth in my life, certainly, and within Division 35, certainly is helping us move away from those rigid categories that I feel like I've been living in my whole life, of the gender binary, of categories around race, around ethnicity, around all kinds of ways that we identify that we know as psychologists that we engage in schematic processing, right? But as our schemas are starting to open and we're recognizing the complexity of our identities, I think that that is really at the heart of our liberation and our future, and how we can learn to live together and not only accept but embrace each other for exactly who we are.
Beautiful. I love that. Accepting each other exactly for who we are. Well, in closing, you all know I love proverbs and poems and music. And so I would like to ask each of us if you can share either a proverb or a line from a poem or song that inspires you and perhaps can inspire all of us as we celebrate Women's History Month. Dr. Catherine.
In 1999, I attended the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools conference, and Dr. Maya Angelou was the keynote speaker. Right? And so you can imagine what that audience looked like. And she concluded her keynote address by singing, "This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine." And she freed me in that moment. And I go there when I need to and want to. So thank you for asking.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. And Dr. Carey.
I would choose a quote by Dolores Huerta. She was a labor leader and civil rights activist who worked closely with Cesar Chavez. She actually coined the phrase "si se puede," like, yes, we can do it. But the more inspiring quote to me is, every moment is an organizing opportunity. Every person a potential activist. Every minute a chance to change the world.
Beautiful. So letting our light shine as we change the world. And I'll close us with Dr. Joy Jones, who is a medical doctor who practices liberation medicine and is also a singer and a poet. Has a song where she consistently goes to the chorus, which is, I'm beautiful, yes, I am. You're beautiful, yes, you are. And I hope on this Women's History Month that all of us can affirm the person we see in the mirror, indeed beautiful. Thank you both for joining us. Happy Women's History Month.
Thank you.
Thank you.